The sun has gone down at Hangman's Hill, and the ghost at Misery Corner isn't walking tonight. So, welcome to the Weird Tales Radio Show, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, magic, and folklore. And now, here's your host, writer, award-winning journalist, best-selling author, and sometime werewolf hunter, Charles Christian.
Hello and welcome. Thank you for joining me. My name is Charles Christian and you're listening to another episode of the Weird Tales Radio Show. And our first topic is going to be alien contactees. Because, well, it's a little bit comical. So let's get on with the show. Now, here at Weird Tales Radio, we recently got hold of a copy of a book called A is for Adamski. That's George Adamski, not Adamski the musician, in case you're wondering. And the subtitle is The Golden Age of the UFO Contactees, and it's by Adam Gorightly. And it's a fascinating book. Contains lots and lots of photographs from the 40s and 50s and 60s of UFO conventions in the States, an era that is now forgotten. You can get it on Amazon. In the UK, it's £19.60, and there's also a coloured version, which is £44. And Janie's been having a look at some of the contactees.
Yes, I have indeed, and there's many fascinating stories. In fact, they're all very interesting. So I've just picked out a few to see whether they float your boat. But there's a tale here of Cynthia Appleton, who was born, just to give you the era, about 1930, and she was a British housewife. Cynthia Appleton. She witnessed, well, obviously, had a UFO experience and an alien interaction with a blonde-haired Venusian who materialised in her home in Birmingham, in England. Naturally, he was outfitted with a domed helmet and a metallic jumpsuit, as they all were, of course.
Yes. Anyway,
he telepathically voiced his concerns that we Earthlings were going about space travel all wrong. And, quote, your scientists, obviously, I'm saying this in English, but I don't know if he spoke in alien language. Your scientists are pulling against the greatest force of gravity by going straight up. You should travel with a sideways attitude. See? NASA, you've been getting it all wrong. He then opened his arms and a television set appeared, projecting three-dimensional images of miniature flying saucers. Anyway, Cynthia said, these spaceships were nothing like I've ever seen in my life before, which I imagine if you're a Birmingham housewife, you probably haven't.
Yes.
They seemed to take off and they hovered in space for 2 or 3 seconds. They went to the left, they went to the right, and then all of a sudden the TV screen suddenly disappeared along with the Venusian. However, because that happened in 1957, let's get the facts right. 1958, he comes back, but without his helmet. Preceded by a burst of light.
No endos there, please.
No. This time he brought along his superior. And the two of them informed Appleton that special brainwaves facilitated their communications. Later appearances featured the two Venusians decked out in business suits and Homburg hats, arriving in a car instead of their spaceship. But among the secrets revealed by the pair was that time did not exist, and that the cure for cancer involved changing the vibrational rate of atoms at a subatomic level. It was probably a little bit before their time. Anyway, Appleton, Cynthia, to us, told the Venusians that they were wasting their time imparting such weighty information to a simple housewife who could barely keep up with what they were saying. Which I think explains why there was all this activity in the 50s and then they kind of trailed off. It's just not worth it, is it?
Yeah.
You know.
Those
Birmingham
Earth
House,
people, they're just so
they're
thick.
just thick, really. However, another year later, the story takes a turn for the weird, if that's at all possible.
Mm-hmm.
When she reported to the press, "I'm going to have a baby from Venus." Yeah, I know what you're all thinking.
Rhymes with Venus.
Apperton was first alerted to this Venusian bun in the oven in September 1958. The revelation coming, of course, from her Venusian friends. Apperton retained no memory of ever being engaged in flagrante delicto with either of her otherworldly visitors. So a bit of amnesia there. Anyway.
Yeah.
Might be the missing time thing. The Venusians also predicted the child would be named Matthew and have blonde hair and weigh 7 pounds 3 ounces. And at age 14 would become the leader of men. And true to the Venusians' predictions, the baby boy did indeed have blonde hair, weighed exactly as noted, and with all this being so, was appropriately named Matthew.
Mm-hmm.
Afterwards, Apperton, her son Matthew, and the rest of the family withdrew from public view. So if Matthew Apperton did actually become a leader of men, he's been very secretive about it.
He has indeed.
And if you're out there, Matthew, could you contact us? We'd like to know what exactly you're up to.
Yes, there's a vacancy in the Conservative Party this moment.
And at the head of some other large nation states.
That's probably fair to say, yes.
Yeah. So that's her. I thought that's very sweet, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
Who else have we got?
Well, there are men involved in this, obviously, but we have another lady called Erica Bertschinger, born about the same era, 1929. Anyway, this was near to my heart because in 1973, Erica Bertschinger fell off a horse and landed on her head, after which she realised she was a reincarnation of the Blessed Virgin Mary. Falling off the horse bit was the bit that I'm relating to me, not
that you're related to the Virgin Mary.
No. Not long after, she began conversing with a whole host of disembodied beings, many of them biblical figures that included Jesus, who, it turns out, was an E.T.
Uh-huh.
Anyway, in 1980, Bertschinger changed her name to Urella, or Urila, I'm not quite sure, and founded a religious order, some may say a cult, of course, and called it Fiat, as in the car, Fiat Lux.
Mm-hmm.
Hoping for sponsorship?
Could be. From the soap powder as well.
Yes, she was hedging her bets both ways. What a clever girl. Anyway, that's Fiat Lux. It was headquartered in Germany's Black Forest. But it's not so silly, actually. Fiat Lux is Latin for let there be light. Anyway, they all subscribed to the belief that World War III would kick off in 1998. Not 1991, 1998. Followed by a Nazi flying saucer invasion that would bring about Armageddon. While this was all going on, Bertschinger and her bunch would be transported up by a big beam into an awaiting mothership as Earth was being cleansed of all human evil and afterwards restored to a pre-Adam and Eve paradise. After it was all right again, the Fiat Luxers would then return to start over again, overseen, of course, by Jesus Christ, the E.T. This is obviously just her version of the world. Unfortunately, or at least unfortunately for Bertschinger's bunch, Armageddon didn't go down quite as planned, if you recall 1998, and shortly after, Fiat Lux went underground, contemplating their next move on the world stage. They're still going, I think.
20 years later, they're still underground.
Well, they are, to be fair, yeah.
Yeah.
Since then, Fiat Lux have experienced occasional run-ins with the law regarding tax evasion.
Oh, dear.
They should have set up in Switzerland, shouldn't they? Not
Yep.
Germany. And the
Gone
sale of...
offshore.
Yes.
Offshore, yeah.
And they've been a bit naughty, apparently, of a sale of medicinal elixirs containing alleged healing properties.
Ah.
But, worryingly, they're convinced that www equates to 666.
Oh.
Fiat Lux, therefore, does not maintain a website or an email address, so if you do need to find out more, you will have to travel to Germany.
That's
But
very
it'd be worth
convenient.
it.
It would
Yes,
indeed.
yes. Yeah, possibly quite convenient, isn't it?
Right, let's have one more.
One more. All right. Just a quickie then.
Okie dokie.
Okay. Well, I don't know. I'm tempted. Oh,
Okay.
no, okay. We'll go this one, yeah.
Yep.
Samuel Eaton Thompson.
Okay.
He was 1875 to 1960. So, yeah, back in the day. He was a retired railway worker, and he claimed that while driving a stretch of rural road on the evening of March 28, 1950, he came across a landed flying saucer in the woods near his home in Centralia, Washington. States, obviously. He approached the craft and outstepped a group of attractive Venusians wearing nothing but their birthday suits.
Oh.
There's a picture here, which you obviously can't see, but they don't really look like that. They look like mannequins from a lady's shop with a sort of paper mache head on them. Anyway, these hippie Venusians were also vegetarians, which apparently contributed to their wholesome appearance.
All right.
Smooth underneath.
Yes.
Okay. Thompson described them as naive and childlike, and for some reason they had no idea who built the flying saucer they rode in. Thompson spent the night with the nude crew, sleeping on a chair in one of the ship's bedrooms. Oh, ship's bedrooms? It's only about the size of a mini. Okay. The next morning, he asked if he could run home and grab his camera, and then return to take some photos. As Thompson later explained, it was just like trying to take a picture of the sun. There was a glow to it. That film was just blank. I wanted to get some of them right onto the ground to take some pictures of them, but they wouldn't come out. So this chap heads off, says to wife, going out for a beer, love, doesn't come back till the next morning. Mm-hmm. What's he going to say? Aliens.
Aliens.
Obviously. Great
Yes.
story.
Yep.
Yeah, well done, Samuel.
Yep. I like that. Anyway, I say, there's plenty more in the
There's
book.
more. I might give you another treat another time.
Yeah. What I find intriguing is that so many of them, the aliens come down with a message that Earth is about to destroy itself and we must stop being naughty with nuclear weapons and we must live in peace and harmony. And it's actually very much like the 1951 movie The Day the Earth Stood Still, where an alien comes down in a silver army suit and says he's come in peace and with goodwill and that we must all stop fighting or we'll destroy the planet. In matters of aggression, we have given them absolute power over us. Your choice is simple. Join us and live in peace, or pursue your present course and face obliteration. We will await your answer. And apparently when you meet them, you say, Clatu Barado Nicto.
They always speak like that, don't they?
They do. It's
Nanu.
it's
Based on the Spanish, perhaps. Or...
Yes, and it's strange that they all seem to be sort of good-looking white guys and white women.
Yes. Metallic jumpsuits.
Yes.
But I have just got one little one.
Oh, right, right.
Well,
One more.
It just amused me. It was somebody, Paul Villa, who was in Long Beach, California, and he encountered a 7-foot-tall spaceman walking along the beach, and then he met some more of them. But he was instructed to travel to Bernalillo in New Mexico, where he photographed a spaceship that projected a laser beam And the damage it's done, it ignited a small forest fire.
Poor.
I know. I thought perhaps that's where they got Independence Day idea from. Do you think?
Could be.
Yeah. I think, they come all that way. They have all that technology. They ignite a small forest fire.
Yeah, I mean, this is the bit that always gets me about them, that you must be a fairly advanced race to travel across interstellar space, wormhole technology, matter transfer, faster than light drive. And what do you do when you come down to Earth? You do a bit of vivisection with farm animals, and you pick on people of possibly not the sharpest knives in the drawer.
And you create a small forest fire.
And it keeps straight
and then go away.
Then go away.
Yeah, well, we'll be laughing on the other side of our faces when they come down in one of our fields.
Yes, indeed. We'll be out there. Clatu necto.
Yes, at least we know how to speak to them.
Thank you, Janie. I'm beaming you out of here now.
Goodbye.
Goodbye.
If you want to grow your business, save time using the latest tech, and look great online, Weird Appeal Digital can help. We have a free, yes, that's free download listing 40 digital tools, apps and resources to help you grow your brand, promote your project, generate leads, and reach your audience. Just go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales for smart, effective digital design, and your free download. Go to www.appeal.digital/weirdtales.
Earlier this year, it was reported there'd been a breakthrough in the hunt to find the identity of Jack the Ripper. Yes, I know it's over 130 years since he last committed a murder, but people still don't know who he is. Before we look at the new evidence, let's just look at a bit of the background. Jack the Ripper was active during primarily 1888. And there's a little confusion as to how many murders he committed. He definitely is associated with 5 of them: Mary Ann Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes and Mary Jane Kelly. However, there are another 6 murders during this era up to the year 1891, known as the Whitechapel murders. However, police at the time were unable to connect all the killings conclusively. So we generally take the view that arguably one of the world's most famous serial killers actually only killed 5 people. But the next question is, who did it? Well, there are currently over 100 Jack the Ripper suspects who've been named, which is pretty good going. During the time of the active investigation, a barrister called Montague John Druitt was thought to be one of the murderers. He committed suicide by drowning. There was a Polish immigrant called Świerin Klazłowski, sometimes called George Chapman, no relation to Annie Chapman, one of the victims, and he was thought to have been involved, and he was a barber, so had access to knives and the like. And there's Aaron Kosminski, a Polish Jew, and also another barber, and he was later incarcerated in a lunatic asylum. There was a Michael Ostrog, who was a Russian-born conman and thief. And then many, many more. Just to run through them, a doctor called Francis Tumblety, a wife murderer called Henry Bury, a medical student called Thomas Hayne Cutbush, who supposedly murdered prostitutes because he'd caught syphilis from one. Then we have, going further up the social standing, we have Prince Albert Victor, the Duke of Clarence, who was the grandson of Queen Victoria and the son of King Edward VII. And it's also thought that some of the people involved associated with him, including various doctors, William Withy Gull, who was a physician in ordinary to Queen Victoria. Various doctors were also involved because they were either covering up for Prince Albert Victor or they were taking revenge and removing any witnesses who may have known about the prince's sexual peccadilloes, i.e. having it away with prostitutes, and indeed, according to one story, he actually married one of the prostitutes, and therefore it all had to be hushed up. And the artist Walter Sickert, he's also been named as the murderer. And finally, there was Sir John Williams, who was an obstetrician to Queen Victoria's daughter, Princess Beatrice. So, plenty of choice. However, let's get down to the nitty-gritty. And the latest supposed breakthrough is that a shawl that belonged to Catherine Eddowes, the Ripper's fourth victim, has been located and subjected to scientific DNA analysis and suggests that the murderer was the man most popularly associated with it, Aaron Kosminski. Unfortunately, a lot of people aren't very happy with the DNA evidence and how it was conducted. For a start, there is the issue of, did the shawl actually belong to Eddowes? If it did, where's it been for the last 130 years? Where's the chain of custody for the evidence? What happened to it? How come it was around in 1888 and only then reappeared in the early years of the 21st century, sometime around about 2007 or so? How do we know it was hers? The second element is this: there supposedly is DNA on the shawl, but it doesn't necessarily prove that Kosminski was the Ripper, as the DNA of the nature found really only works to say that a particular person wasn't the person involved. The DNA could very much belong to Kosminski, but it could also belong to thousands of other people who could have the same mitochondrial DNA. So again, a bit of an issue there. And then there's also what happened to it during, if it is the genuine shawl, what happened to it? How many other people have touched it? And how many other people's DNA have contaminated it? And indeed, one of the complaints was that a relative descendant of Kosminski has been photographed holding up the shawl. And obviously she has the same DNA as Kosminski, and therefore potentially the DNA found on it was hers, not her ancestors. So, fascinating little story, and frankly we're none the wiser because everybody involved with it is not only dead, but most of the people, investigators and suspects, have been dead for over 100 years. However, the fine world of ripperology, as it's called, will no doubt ignore that and continue to come up with names and theories about suspects for many years to come.
Something wicked this way comes. Weird Harvest Press presents Harvest Hymns, the sweet fruits and twisted roots of folk horror, a 2-volume set of books investigating the music of folk horror, featuring contributions from some of the biggest names in the field. Candia McCormack, Johnny Trunk, Maddie Pryor, Sharon Krause, Jim Jupp and Kemper Norton, to name just a few. Available now via lulu.com. 100% of all Weird Harvest Press profits are donated to wildlife charities.
Welcome, fool. You have come of your own free will to the appointed place. It is time to keep your appointment with the Wicker Man. The Wicker Man.
In our latest witchcraft-related story, and we've reported before how in past times many allegations of witchcraft were made about old widows on the basis that their families were after their property and wanted to get them out of the way so they could get their hands on the land or the house. And this is a variation of this. It's a very recent story from middle of May in Spain, and a judge has ruled that a woman could disinherit her sons who accused her of witchcraft. The story is a Basque mother of three. During her life, two of the children, Javier and Georges, were frequently very abusive about her, and Javier used to accuse her of being evil, of practicing witchcraft, and said her house was haunted and malevolent. And she was rather unhappy with this and said, right, that's it, I'm writing you out of my will, you'll get nothing. Anyway, the old lady died, and the two children who were disinherited took the will to court, and it was heard in Bilbao, which is in the Basque Country, and the Supreme Court ruled that the mother was entitled to cut the children out of the will. And as a result, the son who was pleasant to her, who didn't abuse her, that's a son called Ignacio, he got all the mother's assets. So there's a little lesson to you. Don't be rude to your mother while she's alive, because she might well come back to give you a nasty fright when she's dead. And that's it. We're almost out of time. However, before we go, time for one last story. And this is good example of the fact that irony is alive and well and living in North Kentucky. It seems that the owners of the Ark Encounter, which is a giant replica of Noah's Ark, have hit problems because the site was hit by heavy rain. Didn't damage the Ark, which is appropriate enough, but it did damage the roads leading up to it. And so they've sued they wanted to claim on their insurance. However, the insurance companies said, no, we don't cover rain damage of this nature because it's an act of God. Slight irony here that Noah took advice from God and built his ark, and these people built an ark, and an act of God is preventing them from claiming their insurance compensation. They're claiming $1 million in damages. And by way of a little bit of background, the Ark was built by a character called Ken Ham, who apparently spent around $100 million on the project with the help of taxpayer subsidies, and it is very much in the creationist approach, and he sees the Bible as a historical record and interprets it literally. So he takes the view the earth is actually only 6,000 years old, and that dinosaurs lived alongside with humans, and there's even a section in his ark that contains the dinosaur wing, where the dinosaurs lived. But as we say, Unfortunately, God had other ideas for the creationist, and the rains came and nobody could get there. Really can't say any more than that, can you? So until next time, thank you for joining us. Please do join us again. And until then, stay well, stay weird. Good night.
Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia, is baying at the moon, which means it's time for us to go. You've been listening to the Weird Tales radio show with Charles Christian, your weekly fix of ghost stories, urban myths, witchcraft, magic and folklore. You can keep in touch with us online at www.weirdtalesradio.com, by email to weirdtales@icloud.com, and on Twitter @urbanfantasist. Join us again next week for another edition of the Weird Tales radio show. Good night.
This podcast is a part of Straight Up Strange Productions. Discover more shows like this one at straightupstrange.com.